given you've had a long history of working out, what are some injuries you've had that have made you put a stop on certain things, lifting, lifestyle? And I'll get more into this later, but I want to also bring up the depression that comes with it and how you might attack that. I have a lot of personal stories on that end. I did start a journey of 9 months. That's the farthest I went until I got injured, and it had nothing to do with the gym. I got injured outside of the gym. And I remember from that day on, my brain would tell me something, and I would want to do something else, to the point where it contributed farther into that injury, and I was unable to lift for about 2.5 years. Crazy. So I'm genuinely curious how and what type of injury you've had before that kind of put a stop on you, to make you really think about how to approach this.
I've been blessed with being very robust, so nothing stops this freight train. Some of the people I work with, they call me Juggernaut, because like once I get momentum going a certain way, like there's no stopping me. And so I've been really fortunate in that way. I have gotten hurt many times. I tore my pec a couple times, but really all that injury did was make me a multimillionaire. That's how I came up with the Slingshot and stuff like that. So the injuries and the pain and different things that I went through were pivotal. And, I've said before that pain is my mentor. Pain teaches you a lot of things. Luckily enough for me, none of the injuries I encountered led to me having to discontinue anything in particular. I've been able to continue onward. When I was powerlifting, people have seen the video before I fell with 1,085, and that was obviously very, very traumatic. It messed up my knee and my ankle and stuff like that. But I was able to, get myself back in the gym and just try to figure out like what I can do. And at that time, I couldn't do much. I couldn't move very well for 3 months or so. So I was restricted to like walking and in the gym, like not having super productive workouts. But my focus just changed. So in terms of like depression or something like that, I realize everyone's different. So I don't want to, I know that depression exists. I know how difficult things can be. And I know people deal with depression and anxiety. But for me, my motto is like, not on my fucking watch. Like that ain't happening to me. Mm-hmm. I've said before, I've never had a bad day. It's just a perspective though. Of course I've had fucking bad days. My mom died. My brother died. People close to me have died from all kinds of different things. My mother died from obesity. My brother died of drug abuse. I've had a bunch of friends run into different things and stuff like that too. That unfortunately they're not here any longer. And it's, it's brutal. But I've learned to, gain a different perspective. And I found years ago in just studying like personal development, I landed on something called equanimity. And equanimity is balance. Equanimity is the balance of the mind in otherwise interpreted situations that people would think are chaotic. And you can think they're chaotic, or you can interpret them whatever way you would like. So my mom, when she died, she's no longer in pain. My mom was on a walker for a while. She was really struggling. She had a lot of pain in her legs and stuff like that. And she's also just suffering because she was heavy, and she's been ridiculed for that from the time she was a kid. She always struggled with her weight. And so I can say, shit, you know what? She is very religious. She believes in God. And, now she's with him, and she gets to, watch me and watch her grandkids, from that perspective. And she's no longer, dealing with the same pain that she had here on earth. And then same thing with my brother. My brother was like a tortured soul, because it's a really interesting thing is because we battle ourselves internally so powerfully and so much, that can lead to a lot of depression. That could lead to a lot of mental health issues. And that was my brother. My brother was bipolar. And so for him, it was hard for him to go through a day really, of just being like straight. Like he didn't want to like, not do drugs. And I gained interesting perspectives in both cases, learning from my mother and learning from my brother. I got a very up close view of these, very different but very similar diseases in a lot of ways. My brother was, drug addicted and bipolar, and my mother being obese. It was like obesity and addiction, they are like, they run very parallel to each other, right? And my brother, who I said was a tortured soul, is kind of like, maybe not fair to say in some ways, because who the fuck knows about like what bipolar even barely is, I don't pretend to know a lot about it, but it seemed like it was his own decisions that was leading to his own demise, right? And for some reason, he felt within himself that he had to do things that hurt himself. And then my mother's same thing with obesity. It's like, well, we gone over this a lot about nutrition and so forth, and it was just very hard for her to put those things together. So in both cases, I could say, man, both people just had such a compromised life, and they didn't want their life to be compromised. And I'm fortunate that it ended, and I'm fortunate that I had all the time to spend with them. So yeah, for me, I've learned some of these things over the years, and it's probably partially due to my age. I'm 48, so with that comes some wisdom eventually, hopefully.
Yeah. The key word there really stood out to me. It was decisions. And I think that's a giant hot topic right now in terms of where society's headed. I mean, their headspace is also just so messed up. We get a lot of DMs from people saying like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And there's no real clear answer, right? I mean, like, look at you, man. One of the strongest dudes that I know, and one of the strongest dudes in the world, if anything. And even you have your struggles. I mean, it's an internal battle. It's an external battle as well.
And my struggles are the same.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Our struggles are the same. They might be different because there might be a material thing, or there might be a situation. Mm-hmm. You're doing technical stuff with these cameras and so forth, and I don't do that kind of stuff. So like, of course, there's differences. We're different people, but the struggles are very similar. The back and forth in the head of should I do this or should I do that? Should I eat this today? Should I eat that? Shouldn't I go to bed? Like, oh, it's 10:30. Like I talked to myself yesterday about like it's all the same shit. We're all dealing with very, very similar things.
100%. And I think that's something people need to really just take in. I think the more you know that we are all in this together, the easier it becomes, kind of thing, right? Like we're all going to deal with death at a certain point. We're all going to deal with injuries. We're all going to deal with that same kind of chit chat in the mind.
Yeah. What else is there? There's relationships. There's money. There's pain, and there's the heartache that humans go through are all very similar. Like where the heartache comes from, mm-hmm. And ultimately, I think the reason why like mushrooms and stuff like that have become so much more popular, mm-hmm. is because something like alcohol is just like a pause button. Mm-hmm. On life. It's like, let me just put everything on pause, which is awesome, right? I can forget everything, sweep everything under the rug, and fuck it, we'll worry about it tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But mushrooms, man, like it's called a trip for a reason. It's a hell of a journey. It's a hell of a trip. And you're like, oh my God, the problem's me.
It's an acceleration of maturity, if anything.
You're like, what the fuck? No, and it's not me. I'm not the problem. And it's like a mirror held up to your face. Like, no, this is the issue. Every day, this is the issue. And it's like a mirror of yourself. You're like, this just can't be true. This is bullshit.
Well, I do appreciate that you started this conversation out with, talking about these very monumental experiences for you, losing, your mother and brother and whatnot. I mean, losing a father, that was the single biggest driver for me heading into this space and studying circadian biology.
Ended up being a positive in a way, right? There's a lot of negative to it, but ended up being something that carved out a life for you. Exactly.
And so for me, like ever since that experience, I always feel like I have a chip on my shoulder. Like I'm trying to redeem his death essentially, which is interesting. What are the motivating factors for you from those experiences? Like Yeah. What inspires you to do everything that you do? Because you push yourself at a very high level, and we see that.
Yeah, I mean, some people have seen Bigger, Stronger, Faster. It's on Netflix if people want to check it out. It's a story of my family, and we talk about steroids and trying to be number one in America and trying to get ahead and all these different things. And it's a very personal story. Me and my brothers are in there. My brother Chris Bell, he directed it, and my oldest brother Mike is in there. And when you see that film, you see that he's attached to, he wanted to be great, and again, he's such a great mentor in a way to learn mainly from his mistakes. But I saw that and I was like, he wants to be great. What's great? Like, great's weird, right? Like, being great, I guess to be great, you have to be great in like a lot of people's eyes. And that's like, well, shit, that sounds tough to be great, right? And so I kind of learned from that when I saw my brother trying to do that and trying to want to be like great, popular, celebrity status and those kinds of things. I thought to myself, you know what, that's probably the worst way to get there, is to try to get there.
Agreed.
And probably a better way to get there is, because my brother, what he suffered from, he didn't know how to be good. Even as a kid, like, he couldn't behave for like 10 minutes. He couldn't behave for 5 minutes. He was always getting in trouble. And I think that the pursuit of being great is misinterpreted. And it's like as if you're trying to be great like right now, like today. But it's the act of being good for a long period of time. And we can look at different athletes and we can look at different celebrity people that we think, oh, that guy's great. But usually what makes them great is like the longevity of it, being able to put together like a body of work. If somebody wins like one NBA championship, that's a huge deal. That is great. That's in the context of basketball. That's the greatest thing they can do in a particular year. And depending on who the best player was or whatever, that guy's great. Is he going to go down as being like great in the eyes of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, if he only did it one time, right? So you're looking for this body of work, and outside of that, like, I'm just mentioning like celebrity status, but what makes someone great has nothing to do with how many people like them. My dad is great, but like, people, they know who he is from the film, again, from Bigger, Stronger, Faster. Some people have seen that and they know who he is. But if that film was never made, my dad's still fucking great. Like, this other stuff doesn't matter, right? Yeah. And your dad was great, but like, he wasn't a celebrity. Like, only X amount of people knew who he was. Yeah, he might not have been around in time to have Instagram and to be viral on TikTok, right? And so our view of what great is it's really thrown off, because how many people do we know? I mean, I think everyone's great to a certain extent. I have a belief that everyone has like a divinity within them. But how many people do we know that are in our life where you're like, that motherfucker's great. That guy's great. Your uncle, your brother, like, there's people in your life, and you value everybody that's in your life, right? But there's some people where you're like, that dude's great. Like, every time you see him, you end up with a big smile on your face before you even have any conversation with them. You end up in that space. And I forgot. I'm sorry. I went so far off the beaten path of your question, but your question being like, what motivates me and what drives me, and it has nothing to do with being great. All it has to do with is just wanting to do really well every day, and wanting to do a little bit better than I did yesterday. It's pretty simple. I think we get the opportunity to make up why we're here. We don't know why we're here as humans, and we'll never be able to figure that part out. But you may as well like be on a mission while you're here. And my mission that I've been saying for over a decade now is, I was put on this earth to make the world a better place to live. And you get to make that up, whatever the thing is that you think you're supposed to do, your calling or whatever it is. It can be as wacky and as weird and as silly or as funky as you want. But when you have that, you now have a North Star. You now have this thing that you can kind of be aiming for. It's like, oh, why do you keep trying these wacky diets? Oh, well, I'm here to make the world a better place to lift. And if I can get more people more fit, then maybe people will give a shit about lifting, because people don't care that much about lifting, or people don't care that much about going to the gym. I think it's like 5% of America only does that, which is just mind-boggling, because in my world, it's like everything, right? And to America, it's like it's only a small percentage of people even participating at all. So yeah, that's some of my perspective on, wanting to just do good stuff. Do stuff that I feel good about, though, not in relation to everybody else. I mean, you can't ignore social media. I can't ignore the cameras. I can't ignore any of that, but I'm trying my best to do stuff as if that wasn't part of it. Because long before the cameras and long before social media, even though I started my YouTube channel in 2006, right when YouTube started, basically, even though I've been filming a lot of stuff for many, many years, there's 10 years prior to that, or maybe 15 years prior to that, that I was already lifting. I was already like doing like all this stuff in fitness.
We recently did an episode called How to Unfuck Your 30s. And the reason why I wrote that episode is because I had just turned 31, and I noticed a huge shift from 29 to 31 in terms of like just standing on your 2 feet, man. That changed. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, does this mean that my bones will get worse? Does this mean my strength will get worse? Does that mean I lose muscle? Is gaining weight easier? Is that bad? How is that going to affect me, my DNA, my lineage, everything, right? And seeing as bodybuilding is your everything, right? I see a lot of people at the gym that merely do it just to get women on a Friday night, right? I feel like that's just going to diminish one day. You're not going to maintain it. I'm more interested in how you built your psyche from a young age up until today, and how it became this today. Like, what are some, I guess, life philosophies that you had growing up that might have either changed into what it became today, or, I guess this kind of follows a struggle of some sort, but I'm just curious as to what keeps you full energy every day and how you shut out that noise, because this is everything to you. And a lot of people will not understand that, you're doing a very difficult thing, by the way. I mean, given that we are not bodybuilders, we dabble here and there, but we find it to be such a struggle to even join in to the community or get your body to a certain fit point. You don't necessarily need to be a big guy, but I don't even know what my question is here.
There's a lot of things to address.
There's a lot of things to address, but I think I'm just more interested as to what your mental structure is for that started it for you to become what you are today. Like what kind of speed bumps you hit, and all of that.
I think in my life, I have to tell people I've been very fortunate, and I think sometimes people they maybe tune that out. They want to hear the person with the really traumatic story. They want to hear the David Goggins story. And that is not my story. I grew up with 2 parents that are amazing. My mother passed. My dad's still alive. My dad was always absolutely incredible. Both my parents were super supportive. I played football and a lot of other sports, and so did my brothers, and both parents were just unbelievable. They were great role models. I remember being a teenager and, starting being more into girls and stuff like that, and I would sometimes watch my dad when a pretty woman would walk by, and I was like, it's impossible. There's no way he's not going to look. And he wouldn't, but I think it was because he knew he was with me. So I asked him one day when I got older, I was like, hey man, you never looked. And I was like, I'm a married man, but like, hey, I might, take a peek here and there. And he just said, and what he said shocked me, because it wasn't what I thought. I thought he was like not looking because he like knew he was with his son and wanted to set a good example. And he said, "Oh, I can never do that. You know, it'd probably hurt your mother." I was like, holy shit. You know, like that's some really powerful love. And so I'm a byproduct of a shit ton of love, a lot of love in my family, a lot of turmoil too, because my brother with the drug addiction and my mom's whole side of the family, addicted to drugs, alcohol. My mom was abused as a kid, both sexually, verbally, all that kind of stuff. So she really went through it. And I think that she wanted to provide an awesome life for me and for her children. And I don't know how she did it because she was so broken inside. I think just, you know, her and my dad were a really good mix to be able to just pull off being able to raise children. There's a lot of things that happened in my childhood that probably have led to me, you know, I guess piecing together how I kind of came across, you know, this living in this space of having this particular mindset. And so much of it has to do with there was a damaged side of the family and a not damaged side of the family. So my mother's side of the family, like literally their house. So my parents, I got to back up a second. My parents met each other through school. They lived down the street from each other. My dad winked at my mom on the bus. He was like 15 and my mom was like 14. And then they were together ever since that point, pretty much. And so they became like great friends, and then they had, you know, relationship and marriage and kids and so forth. And so the whole thing started so long ago, but my mom's side of the family struggled with alcoholism and drugs. My mother's sister died when she was 9. She had leukemia. And so the family was already like drinking, and there was, you know, some shit like that going on already, but that just dropped a bomb on the family. And there was just a lot of turmoil. And that's when things got abusive and things got even worse than that at a certain point. So when we would go to Christmas, because my parents, you know, they were on the same bus together, they literally lived down the street from each other. So on Christmas, we would go to my mother's side of the family. We'd go to their house, and we visit with my grandma and grandpa from that side. And then we would go to our other house. We'd go to the Bell side of the family. The difference literally was night and day. My mother's side of the family, it was dark. Like the house was dark. The house was like rickety, you know, it was a nice home. But it like creaked, and it was like something kind of out of a horror film. Like you didn't want to be there when when I was a kid, I didn't look forward to going there. I was always like, fuck, we got to go here. Like, I don't even want to do this. And my grandpa, he was okay, but he was kind of mean, you know, he'd be like, "Oh, you're sitting in my chair." And like, he would just kick you out of his chair. It's really like, I don't remember much else about him. He wasn't kind. He was kind of always grumpy. And for a kid to be in that environment, you're like real quiet and you're kind of like scared. Like you don't know what's happening. You know, you're kind of on edge because there's tension in that place. Right. And then, so and then we would drive over, which is just, you know, probably didn't even need to drive, probably could have walked, but we're lazy. So we'd drive down to my other grandma's house, and people would be outside, even if it's cold out, chucking around a football. Some kids would be playing like wiffle ball. Some kids would be playing basketball, but tons of kids everywhere. Everything is set up for the kids. Everything's set up like nurturing and nurturing the children. And sometimes the adults would be inside, but a lot of times the adults were outside with the kids, playing with them. And then maybe they would, because you can't play with kids forever, so they'd go inside or whatever. But anyway, I saw this two completely different ways of living. Mm-hmm. And I recognized at a young age, oh shit, I think that you can kind of choose the way that you want to live and set up your life. Because my grandfather, my mom's dad, the side of the family that was more sour, I guess you'd say, they had good finances and stuff, and like they lived kind of comfortably. So to me as a kid, I didn't really know any better. I just kind of thought like it's that simple. Like, oh, they look like they have some money, like they should probably be happy or whatever, and they seem like they have a good family, so I don't understand what's the problem. And I didn't really know that, like, alcohol, like, just over time can really, like, warp your mind and all those different things. But yeah, I saw those two different ways of living. And then I also had, like, my uncle Pete on my dad's side, kind of a little bit of a hard ass, but, like, really nice and funny and friendly and stuff. I remember him, everybody was outside, and I was the youngest out of the entire family. And we were playing, and, like, something happened, and it made me cry. I was always running inside crying about something because I was the youngest. And my uncle took me to the window, and he said, "Hey," he's like, "Hey, calm down. Like, what's going on?" I'm like, "Oh, so-and-so." He's like, "Hey, never mind that." He goes, "Look outside." And I looked outside. He's like, "Everyone's playing. Like, everyone's making a snowman. They're having a snowball fight." He's like, "You want to stay in here and cry like a baby, or you want to make a decision to go back outside and play?" Mm-hmm. And I was like, "I want to play," And so I went back outside and played. And so I've kind of took that on, the rest of my life. I could sit there and cry, and my uncle could have listened to me, and he could be like, "Oh, you fell and you scraped your knee, and let's go talk to so-and-so that made you fall," or whatever. But no, it's like, you have a decision. You can be as happy as you want to be, not just from playing outside, but you can be as happy as you make up your mind to be in this life, I believe.
That's a crazy life lesson right there. And I mean, I'm sure you're grateful that your uncle was kind of like a mentor for you in those times.
I mean, he empowered
That's
you
such a
during
young
that
age.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Super relatable. I love the way you describe things, by the way. It's very descriptive. It helps me build an image. So it's kind of cool. Very relatable. When I was younger, we used to travel a lot because my mom's family lives in Saudi Arabia. They're not from there, but they lived there their entire lives. And I remember visiting them. There's always something off, right? Here, we're more individualized in America, right? So each family on their own, and we visit each other. When I visited, it was clumps of families in one giant villa that was basically an apartment complex. So a lot of problems arise from that. But I think I can relate in some sort of way just because I also had options, and then options later turned into decisions. And then obviously you have the sour uncle, and then you could just tell by the environment, right?
Right.
So that makes you susceptible to learning like what different environments like really give off. Because as humans, I think you learn the older you get that everything is supplied with its own energy, and you can just feel it, right? So even as a kid, you mentioned tension. And I mean, yeah, you're just a kid, but you can still feel that, and that's super incredible. And again, that's something similar we all have as humans. And I feel like that's kind of the whole theme of this podcast.
It's stored in the body too. Like that book, what's it called? The Body Keeps the Score, or something of that nature. Like emotion is stored in the body.
Well, it's honestly insane because one thing I've learned, I did have to go through to get checked if I had colon cancer 3 years ago. And this was all due to gastrointestinal issues. And what this taught me about internal trauma is insane. I had no idea up until you mentioned that book a couple of years back. And the way that the body stores it, the human body is so fascinating. Like, I don't know if many people know this, but for example, you could have back problems due to trauma. It doesn't necessarily have to be a slip disc, but who specializes in this? It was Dr.
Dispenza? Joe Dispenza?
Joe Dispenza. Yeah, Joe Dispenza. Gabor Mate also talks about this a lot. But for people that don't believe in this, I would highly recommend you go check out their work, because what this has taught me is the power of letting go of certain things, right? And it all starts with kind of how you talked about, or what you talked about resembled control, right? And it comes from an internal space. So that's strength. I know Mark looks strong, and he is, but his first-hand strength came from the inside, right? Because without that, you wouldn't be here.
Right.
right? I'm sure that's a huge driver. But I honestly learned that sitting there and digging through your traumas is not necessarily going to help you. What really is knowing that you are holding on to a trauma. I think those are two distinctive little pieces there.
I would say, you know, something interesting on things of that nature is like how long, you know, like how, like, so somebody cuts you off on the freeway, like how long do you hang on to that? Like how mad are you? My son mentioned something really interesting to me. He's a filmmaker, and we were talking about something, and we were like laughing. And he was like, you know, it's kind of funny with laughing. He's like, there's a point where you stop smiling. And we were just talking about like how many seconds go by until you stop smiling again, and how no one really ever sees that because they just see that someone smiles. But then there's a point where you let go of like whatever was funny, or you're trying to show somebody that you liked what they said, or you're showing some sort of approval, you know, nodding your head and so on. But like, you don't just sit there and perpetually nod your head. You don't just, you know, stay there like smiling the whole time. It like makes you look like a crazy person. So there's like there's an appropriate amount of time attached to stuff. You know, like if you were just insanely mad about your dad's death, and you were, you know, like how are you going to interpret that? You know, you could be mad about it. You got every right to be mad about it. You got every right to be super frustrated. You probably have, like, I think we could agree, like it's reasonable to maybe mistreat some people that you love just for a little bit, you know, just for like you're short with people. I'm not talking about any kind of violence or anything like that, but you're short with people, and you're just got this nasty chip on your shoulder for a little bit. I think everyone could, you know, friends and stuff could be like, oh, well, he's, you know, he fucking dad died. Like, Jesus, you know, we got to give him a minute, right? But then there's a certain amount of time. Like, how are you going to be an asshole for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Like, it's got to like wear down at some point. And when you're thinking about, I think we think that there's like an appropriate reaction to stuff, but the reaction doesn't have, there's no law that says that your reaction has to be this. When I input you with this information, when I say this, you have zero choice in how you're going to feel about it. Like, that's not true. You have a choice on how you feel about it. If I say certain words, you are forced to think about what I said in a particular way. Like if I was to mention big giant pink dildo the size of the Empire State Building, you're both forced, like you're literally forced to like think of that for a moment, right? But you could laugh at it. You could also be offended by it, right? Like you can choose. It's like the human body is, and with all the research you're doing, it's very much a computer. And the way I look at it is like you click a button and it has this drop down, and you could apply sad, mad, happy, whatever. And that might be a little too robotic for people, but how about you just pause for a second before you react and before you think, I cannot believe that person just said that to me. Holy shit, like this. And then you say something that makes the whole situation way worse. When it could have been, you could have went, hey, you know what? Can we go back to what you just said? I don't know why that's not sitting with me really well. That kind of hurt my feelings. That's way different than being like overreactionary and now being all, you know, pissed off or whatever way you met that, you know. I think that, yeah, how long we kind of hold on to something is interesting. And then also like, what do we want from it? You're holding on to this, and do you feel like you need to like show everybody that you went through this like traumatic thing? What do you want to have happen based on this? And if you are kind of digging through your closet, if you are digging through your traumas, yeah, what's the outcome? Like, what are you looking for? Like, why are you scrolling through your comments? You know, are you looking for the good side? Are you looking for the bad side? And then when you do find these good or bad things, what are you going to do about it? You're going to actually like answer questions, or you're going to actually just be mad at the people that are mad about something that you said that goes against their beliefs?
This reminds me of a question that's been floating online, and it goes, if you were out on a trip with your girl and she goes missing, several hours go by, you're looking, You go to the police station, you submit a report, then time is done. What do? You go back to the hotel and you're just panicking. Do you still do your skincare routine? And one of the clever answers were,
you still brush your teeth at night.
Yeah. I just do it depressingly. Like,
right. Yeah.
So it's weirdly enough, it's its own act of balance, again, with your sense of control. Because you could just go emotionally react immediately, or you can react immediately in your head, balance it out, and be like, let's actually have a conversation about this, et cetera, hurt my feelings. Let's talk about this. Is there animosity towards it? Whatever. Super cool. I really like your mentality, and I think a lot of people need to adapt their side. I truly, honestly believe most people, or all of us, have that strength inside of us. It's just how we decide to manage it. Right?
It's a practice.
It is. It really is. It's its own muscle, and I think that's where it truly starts. That's where it truly starts for anything, really. I mean, knowledge, body, it all kind of adapts. Yeah.
Let's take a left turn real quick.
Oh.
Because I know Mark wants to talk a lot about this, and I know he
like
wants to get this off his chest.
Oh, yeah.
If somebody searches up your name on YouTube or anywhere right now, they'll find either sugar fasting, sugar diet, Sour Patch gummy worms, whatever. What is the differentiation between sugar fasting and a sugar diet? And what is the motivation behind talking about it a lot? Because I know you get that question a lot.
Yeah, sugar fasting, it certainly is an interesting protocol. I will first start out by saying it is a weight loss strategy. So that's kind of important to know, because a weight loss strategy is not something that's really meant to do forever. Although you probably could turn this into a system, which I think eventually it will be a system, and it won't just be like a fast. But sugar fasting, as the name tells you, it's fasting except for you're utilizing some sugar. So you are eating, right? And then people are, well, that's not fasting anymore. But it's similar to, the reason why it's called sugar fasting is because previously we had like a water fast. And a water fast is very descriptive. Like the only thing that you're surviving on for however long you decide to do it is water. In this case, the only thing we're surviving on are simple sugars. And we're not eating complex carbohydrates. We're also not consuming any fat. And we're also not consuming any protein, which makes the diet like super interesting, because then you're like, man, I'm okay. That's cool that you said I can have sugar, but now it kind of sucks because you pulled the fat out of there. So now we can't have cookies. We can't have ice cream. We can't have donuts, all the fun stuff. We can't have the delicious candies like Snickers bars and peanut butter cups and those kinds of things. But we are left with Sour Patch Kids and some other things like that. And all of those sugars, you want to make sure, if you're going to try sugar fasting, that they don't have any fat in them. Sugar fasting is you're consuming fruit juice, honey, maple syrup, sugar, and candy. Some people are like, oh, I don't want to eat candy. It's bad. Yeah, it is. Candy is bad for your teeth. Like, there's a lot of reasons probably not to overconsume candy. It is easy to overconsume. If you just look at the stats and you look at the carbohydrates and you look at the calories and stuff like that, yeah, it's loaded with calories and you can eat kind of a small amount of it, and it could end up being a large amount of calories for how little food it is. And then there's no volume to it, right? So on sugar fasting, I think the best way to do it is to utilize the fruit juice, smoothies, and stuff like that. And then you're adding more volume. There's volume to food, so we can agree that vegetables typically have a lot of volume, but they don't have a lot of density. Volume being like it's just large. It's going to take up some space in your stomach. And then a lot of things that are really high in volume are also usually absent of some density. Density, again, being the caloric load that the food has. The cool thing about this is we can kind of go back and forth a little bit between the two, because you can just, spoon a thing of honey and there's 17 grams of sugar in that bad boy, which is wild. Because it's like, this is just like, it's vomit from a bee, pretty much. You're like, this is super interesting. And you do get a nice, hit from that. You get a nice like energy burst from that. Results will vary for some people. Some people are going to be more sensitive to that sugar, and they're going to have an awesome response, and they're going to want to go run and work out. And other people, because of their insulin sensitivity, they just might not feel as good doing it. I've had a couple friends that are like, oh man, I did the sugar fast and I did 2 or 3 days in a row of it. I just didn't feel great. It's like, well, that's okay. Maybe it's not a diet that you're going to like enjoy, or like, what did you eat? And then sometimes people are like, well, I ate I'm like, okay, well, you ate primarily Sour Patch Kids. Like, that's probably not going to make you feel so good. Ironically though, the things that are really high in some of these like, high fructose corn syrup and stuff like that, ironically, those things digest usually pretty well. Honey digests really well for most people. Straight table sugar, throw it in some water. It's like, that's going to digest. That's not going to like usually cause anyone to have anything bother their stomach. But then you have things like vegetables, which can bother people's stomach because their body just doesn't have maybe the practice of breaking that down. They don't eat enough vegetables in the first place. And so, now you're presenting them with a diet that has some fruits and vegetables in there, and they're like getting a distended belly. Meanwhile, for other people, they're experiencing the exact opposite. They're like, I feel like this is targeting my fat, and it's actually like pulling weight literally off of like my waistline. And so the results are going to vary quite a bit. That's important for people to understand, but that's sugar fasting. And some people are doing that for 18 hours, and then they're having the latter half of the day be a lean meat source and a starch. For people that want to continue with accelerated weight loss, instead of the starch, you might want to just have vegetables. So this is all a strategy for weight loss. And the main difference between sugar fasting and sugar diet is that sugar diet has a component to it where it is allowing for you to kind of break the sugar fast via consuming some lean meat. Some of the science behind it, there's a bunch of people that have been talking about this for a little while. So much of it stems from the work from Ray Peat. So if you go on X and you find stuff with Ray Peat, you'll find that Ray Peat was curing people of diabetes via carbohydrate, which people didn't think was possible. But there's people before him even that have done studies, and there's people that used to recommend it in the 30s and 40s, I believe, when diabetes wasn't as big of a problem. But these people were suggesting, a carbohydrate-rich diet. One thing to think about too, though, is that we have to just try to I like the word reasonable. I have an attorney with the companies that I have, and he was like, look, the word reasonable, he's like, I'm not going to do shit in court, but it's a great word because I can communicate with you guys and say, hey, I think the practice that what you guys are doing isn't reasonable in accordance to like what my patent is, and then we can kind of like agree or disagree. But that word is really strong. And how do you be reasonable with any of these dietary interventions? Well, let's not make the same mistake that we made with keto. Let's not make the same mistake that we made with carnivore. And the mistakes that were made with keto was people were taking their MCT oil and they were like dumping it on their food, and they were taking, olive oil and just turning the bottle upside down, and just having like ludicrous amounts of fat on top of having ludicrous amounts of calories. And then even in the case of keto, a lot of people weren't really actually following a ketogenic diet, because a ketogenic diet is sort of annoying to follow because a lot of the calories are coming from fat. I think you want like 70%, maybe 80% of your calories coming from fat. And your protein is actually like low to moderate. Now you also have carnivore. Some of the mistakes that were made during carnivore was to just tell people they could eat as much as they want. And you got to be careful who we say that to. So like if I was talking to you guys, I could comfortably tell you guys, yeah, I think if I had you try a carnivore diet, I could tell you like, hey, get after it. Unless you guys are like eating world champions or something like that I don't know about. By looking at you guys, I think that you're going to eat reasonably, right? Other people, like their body's like a bottomless pit. They can eat like a crazy amount. I remember a friend of mine was telling me, man, I've been doing the keto stuff. I lost some weight initially, but my weight's been stuck. I said, okay, cool. Well, this gives us an opportunity to figure out, what the main problem is. And I said, send me some pictures of your food. So they send me a couple pictures. It was like an omelet, and it was like a ribeye, right? And I was like, man, I thought to myself, that omelet looked pretty big, and it had like avocado on it and cheese and bacon. It looked amazing. I was like, holy shit, that looks so good. It's making me totally hungry. I said, how many eggs were in that omelet? He's like, 12. I was like, holy shit, man.
Well, that explains it.
Yeah, so that's just a lot of calories. There's no magic in any of these diets. Whether it's sugar fasting or intermittent fasting, it might feel like magic. And some of the things that like keto can do for some people that have mental health issues and stuff, kind of you start thinking about, well, shit, if that can help people with bipolar disorder and stuff like that, that kind of is some magic. But there's really not like a magical thing that's going to like hocus pocus, just like make a bunch of body fat disappear. Even though some of the results that we're seeing from sugar fasting is really powerful. And I guarantee that if people try sugar fasting and they just work on it for a little bit, I guarantee that they're going to lose some weight. They might not like it enough to really do it, to have it really truly be effective. Yeah. And that's fine. Like they might try it and my stomach bothered me. Some people might overeat on it. There's some people out there trying to share a message that you can't overeat. And again, I want to discretion against that. Like I don't think there's a diet where you get to consistently overeat and like lose a lot of weight. Now, some of the theory behind this diet, sugar fasting that is that potentially what's happening is I tell you guys, hey, try this sugar fast. But I don't want you to count calories. I want you to really get after it. Like I want you to 4 or 5 times a day, I want you to have pretty calorically dense stuff. And we go over the nuances of it. I don't just say that to you. I say, look, I want minimum of around 700 to 1,000 calories in each one of these meals. So now we're dealing with, getting up there in calories, 3,500 to 4,500 calories or 5,000 calories, something like that. And I wouldn't expect you guys to do it every day. It would just be like, hey, look, man, in the beginning, just to get after it. And some days you might be at 3,500. On another day, you might be at 4,000. On another day, you might be at 3,000. But the idea is like eat a bunch. And again, I'm not a fan of tracking calories because if I did tell you just to have 4,000 calories every day, you probably would gain some weight. But if you let it auto-regulate, day one, you're all pumped up and you're having some, fruit and fruit juice and you're making smoothies and you're having some candy and you're doing all these things and you're having a great time with it, by like day 2 or 3, a lot of that calms down a little bit. And now we get to your actual hunger signals and we actually get to like real world, more reasonable food choices where you're not just bombarding your body with tons and tons of sugar. So it is showing like a lot of promise and I'm super excited about it. And the feedback, there's obviously a lot of negative. That's kind of part of, I say the first man through the wall gets bloody.
Yeah.
It's kind of, part of being a pioneer and part of, being somebody that is willing to be open-minded. I just want to finish on this idea. Like some people are confused. They're like, you used to be keto, you used to be carnivore. Now you did this like 180 flip. Like what's going on? They think I have something to sell. They think that, Big Sugar has, come and threaten me and so forth. I think all these crazy different things. They think it's just a gimmick for attention or views. And look, man, I love attention and views. It's great. I do. I love the engagement. I love being able to communicate with people that are fans and people that are watching. It's awesome. It's a huge blessing. And yes, it does help my businesses and so forth. But I really do feel that it's effective. Is the reason why I'm excited about it. And it doesn't have there's not a lot of other stuff connected to it. But what I want to say is if you were to take some of the greatest minds that have ever lived, and let's say it was Albert Einstein. Take Albert Einstein and boom, now he's here in 2025. He's in his prime. He's not real old and stuff. He's prime. He's fit. He can learn, right? And imagine he talks with like Neil deGrasse Tyson and other great physicists, and he talks, quantum mechanics didn't even exist back then. So, I mean, I guess it existed, but it wasn't like talked about at that point. So he talks to all these great minds that are in 2025. And then they ask him like, well, hey, what do you think, now about like this theory you had, this theory you had, and this theory you had? And then he would just be like, I'm going to keep everything the same. He wouldn't do that, right? Like he wouldn't do that. He would want to change in accordance to the new information he received. And that's why I changed my mind on some of the things that I was doing previously. This doesn't mean that I think the keto diet's a shitty diet. I think it's an awesome diet. This doesn't mean that I think carnivore is a bad intervention. I love carnivore. I think it's great. I've seen it help a lot of people and do miraculous things with autoimmune disorders. I've seen it do some really cool stuff for people with like skin issues. It's helped some people with weight loss as well. But some of the recklessness sometimes within some of those diets, and the same thing can happen, and the same thing will happen with sugar fasting, sugar diet. The same thing is going to happen. The people being unreasonable within the confines of what you're supposed to do with the particular diet, because everyone's interpretation of everything is going to be so differently. There's never been a person put on this earth to convey any message with an intended purpose that had everybody interpret it the way that they initially wanted them to. Mm-hmm. It's never, I think it's Karl Popper has a quote that talks about something of that nature. It doesn't matter if it's biblical. It doesn't matter if it's, that's why we have laws, and that's why we have attorneys. The whole reason you go to court is for interpretation. Mm-hmm. My interpretation of the law versus your interpretation of the law, and so forth. And, so I think finding ways within some of these diet protocols of being reasonable is going to be very important for people.
Brilliant.
The first time you hear about it, you go, bullshit. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know it was Mark Bell that said it first, because he was just telling me about it.
That was interesting. Yeah, that was interesting. My name kind of like, it, like people were like, and they were like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of left them a little bit. And people are still, calling bullshit on it. But like, you can't call bullshit on something where people are already halfway done with their weight loss results.
Mm-hmm. True.
Like there's some people that wanted to lose 40 pounds and they already lost 20.
Yeah.
There's some people who've been doing this for a little while and they've lost 80 pounds, 60 pounds. And then also, to be clear, like versions of this diet have been around before. There's juice fasting, people juicing. There's the movie Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, probably almost 20 years ago, where the guy was juicing and that guy was taking like tons and tons of fresh produce and like throwing it in a blender, and you need like a specific blender, and he was trying to buy like organic and the high end stuff, and it's expensive and tedious. You got to go to the grocery store a lot if you're doing stuff like that. And so what I try to advise people to do is just like keep this super convenient. And if you're really struggling with the weight loss side of things, you might actually have to do a real sugar fast, meaning like don't eat like a pig, but use the sugar as bursts of energy. Mm-hmm. So that would mean, you just have like a little bit of honey in the morning, maybe two spoonfuls of it, and then you go and you work out. And then, lunchtime comes around, like that was your breakfast. Your breakfast was a couple scoops of honey, right? And then your lunch. And before you were fasting with nothing, so this is like an upgrade, right? And then, for lunch you have, a bunch of blueberries and maybe some raspberries, and maybe you dump some honey on there and you throw a banana, like whatever is for your taste buds. And then maybe, after, you have dinner, you blend up a smoothie, something like that. And then you just kind of put that on repeat, but you're eating in a very reasonable way. And yes, maybe there is some caloric restriction going on, but what I meant to say earlier was the idea of this diet is that it causes a cascade of things to happen within your body that pushes your metabolism up a bit.
Uh-huh.
Now I don't know if that's exactly what happens. I'm not like just resting my hat just on that one theory, because maybe that's not going to work out as great for each person. But there's something called FGF21 that people are making a big deal. I don't like to just get so wrapped up in the science. What I'm excited about is the fact that it works really well. Mm-hmm. And then what I want to really figure out is how do we make it work for everybody? Because FGF21 is like a double-edged sword. It seems to be a little bit like insulin, where insulin can be really powerful and insulin can be like anabolic, and insulin has a lot of great properties. But Some people are overly saturated with insulin and they develop insulin resistance. And it seems like something similar happens with FGF21 because obese people usually have more FGF21 than somebody that is slimmer than them. And that kind of leads people to believe, oh, maybe that signal is not being heard quite the way that it needs to be. Again, the verdict is still out on that. I don't want to just tell people, you know, this is what's happening, and this means you can hammer 5,000 calories every day and you can be shredded. That's not really the case. You're going to have to manipulate the diet just like you would have to manipulate any other diet. The interesting thing about this one, though, is I do believe you get a little bit of a pass in terms of not feeling like shit from the low energy that you might experience from other diets where you're trying to calculate and you're trying to very intentionally submarine your calories. Over time, as you submarine your calories, so goes your metabolism. And in this case, we're trying to keep the fire burning hot. And we're trying to keep that body temperature hot. We're trying to keep the metabolism firing. And if you try to do that with really low amounts of food, especially in the beginning, you're probably not going to have success with sugar fasting.
Crazy. I mean, it just sounds too good to be true, but it is true. That's
Your
the
energy
thing. You're
out,
seeing results.
Yeah, your energy out is going to be improved. I mean, there's, you know, again, people could try the diet and they'd be like, man, it turns out I don't really like fruit that much, and I was eating way too much candy, and I don't think it's for me. Like, again,
I'm assuming this isn't for people that live a sedentary life. You got to be somewhat active, correct?
that's the thing that's fucked up about it.
No way.
The fatter you are, the better it seems to work. Yeah, you have more to give, you know? You have more body fat to give up on your body. You know, might as well just address a couple things since you guys brought up sugar fasting. Might as well just address, like, people have a lot of questions about hormones, and people are very concerned about hormones, and women are always concerned about hormones. First of all, we have to take the bodybuilding community and we have to just stuff them in a box, and we just have to put them aside for a minute, because the bodybuilding community is fucking bunch of crazy people. They're trying to calculate everything, and they're tracking everything, and they're weighing everything. And typically when they experience a lot of fatigue and when they experience poor hormones, as you know, some results they might get from their blood work, or maybe somebody's having maybe their sex drive is lower and energy is low and all that stuff. That has a lot to do with low energy input from a particular bodybuilding style diet. So that is just life being in a long-term caloric deficit. And there's not just bodybuilders that do it, but there's a lot of other people that do it too. There's a lot of females that do it just because they're trying to look good, and a lot of men too. A lot of females I know are on diets where they're consuming like 1,200, 1,300 calories a day. There's a lot of men, like I think so many dudes that I know, they're having like 1,800 to 2,000 calories a day. And this is 100% true. That what I'm about to say is 100% true. You could take those same people and you can have them lose weight with more calories. It's just going to take time because you have to recalibrate their metabolism. So people know how to like reverse diet and manipulate, but that's what this diet's trying to attack, is some of that theory. And it's not even just a theory. A lot of people have implemented this. Bodybuilders now utilize that going into some bodybuilding shows now. So they'll take their calories down into the basement and they'll have really high output. They'll be doing tons of cardio and everything else. And so the difference between their caloric intake and their output is massive at that point. They might be in like a 500 or 1,000 calorie deficit, and they might do that for like a period of time. And then they'll reverse their way out of it, and they'll actually eat more going into a show, and they'll be leaner on stage. It's kind of crazy. But again, we got to take the bodybuilders and we got to kind of put them to the side a little bit. And we do need to learn from them though too, because the reason why they feel like shit is because of all the cardio and because of the low calories for so many days. Yes, they have low amounts of fat they're consuming. We're also talking about people that are trying to get their body fat. For women, they're getting into like single digits. For men, they're getting into like being 5%, 4%. Like if you're 8 or 9% body fat in regular life, you're a mutant. You know, people have never seen anything like it. They'll turn their head. They'll ask you questions about lifting all the time. That's fat for a bodybuilder. you're fat. Like you're like, holy shit, bro, you didn't even diet for the show. You fat bastard. Like that's what they'll kind of say in that community. So that's where the low hormone stuff comes from. All that chatter comes from them. Now, if you're doing something like a sugar fast, it's my belief, and this is just smelly science. This is just some of my theory. You're going to be burning fat off your body, which most people have excessive amounts of body fat. When you burn that fat off your body, you are what you eat. So whatever you've been eating for the last 10, 20 years that made you fat, that's the type of fat that now you're now getting in your diet. So if you had seed oils, you're getting a dose of more seed oils. If you ate better fats, then some of that is going to be now coming into your nutrition because you're actually burning that fat as fuel. I don't know a ton about that. I need to research that more and look into it more, but I find that to be super fascinating. Supposedly, some of your fat-soluble vitamins should be coming off your body and being utilized in your body. So like, vitamin A, D, E, and K are supposed to be, in that fatty tissue as well as you're losing fat. So the question would be, why would your body want to lose muscle? And why would your hormones be messed up if your glycogen levels are appropriate, if your glycogen levels are high in your bloodstream, in your liver, and in your muscle tissue? So we're stocked up on energy. The body kind of checks everything and goes, oh yeah, we got a good amount of carbs, floating around the system. That looks pretty cool. And on top of that, you're actually burning fat. So you're burning body fat and you got carbs. Why would the body make this decision to take muscle tissue from your biceps and try to throw that into the bloodstream and try to turn that into sugar? Like, it doesn't really, I don't think it makes any sense. I'm not saying that it can't happen, because the human body is an anomaly, and every time we think it can't do something, it does it. But it's very unlikely that you really have to worry a ton about muscle loss. Now, if you do this perpetually for, 80 days in a row and you're a thin person to begin with, well, okay, of course you're going to lose muscle mass. You didn't eat any protein for 80 days, right? But if you didn't eat any protein for 2 or 3 days, just try it yourself and see how it works and see what the outcomes are. Your output's going to be better. Your training's going to be better. You're going to notice that you're going to be able to lift more. And for those of you that don't love to lift, but have some experience lifting, you're going to find yourself lifting more. Because the littlest task, even something like just taking out the garbage, like that's all this stuff that you just sit there and just put off until tomorrow, you find yourself doing, even just like shaving my face, or like these little tiny tasks that sometimes stack up, that you're the socks on the ground or whatever all the different shit is that you just don't get to at that time. Your energy is like behind all of it. And you guys see how fired up and animated I am right now. I am kind of like this often, but this is a completely different level for me.
Well, Mark, I'll tell you what, we appreciate the work that you do. Other people cast stones at you for changing your mind, so to speak, and whatnot, but I think that's an admirable quality, because it shows that you have an open mind and you're willing to change your mind according to evidence. And so, again, we're immensely grateful for it. And we just appreciate you having you on, because it's been an incredible one.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it as well. And again, I just want to encourage people just to, don't just do it out of nowhere. Look into it, research it more. It's not hard. Everyone nowadays is a researcher. I think a couple years ago, someone would say they researched something and someone would be like, yeah, you Googled it, right? Yeah. And we kind of make fun of each other and poke fun at each other for that. But now, we got AI, and there's some pretty good ways to research shit. You watch Andrew Huberman, or you watch some of the content that you're putting out, and through seeing some of the content that you're putting out, I might click on a person that you tagged, because now I want to see, oh, what's this guy? Oh, wait, that guy's talking about something similar. Oh, holy shit, maybe there is more to this light thing than I thought. Oh, I kind of thought the blue light blocking glasses were sort of dumb, but maybe why don't I just try them? You know, like, and then you just look at stuff and like, you want to make sure stuff is safe and you make sure it's okay for you and all that kind of stuff. But I just want to encourage people just to try shit, research it and try it.
There we go.
Yeah. I was that person once upon a time. Thanks to people like you and you. We are living great, man. Thank you so much. Mark Bell, everyone. You know where to follow him. We're going to have all of his links in the description down below. You can find the 2 a.m. podcast on YouTube at the 2 a.m. podcast. Please rate us a 5-star review on Spotify. That immensely helps us. And we're available on all major streaming platforms. Thank you so much. Mark, been a pleasure, man. Thank you.
It's freaking 2 a.m., man. Thank you guys for keeping me up this late.
Yeah, of course.
Why is it called 2 a.m.?
Basically,
Yeah,
no, we're trying to match the energy of like those late night conversations that you have with
dig
people
it.
on a camping
yeah,
trip.
when life gets serious, you don't have that very often. So, you know, we miss that. And that's what we're here for.
I dig it. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank
brother.
you.
Thank you.